Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. This webinar seeks to reintroduce you to the 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards. During our time together, we will cover the standards implementation timeline, grade and course crosswalks, and the instructional shifts. Nebraska Revised Statute 79 7601.01 requires that the Nebraska State Board of Education adopt social studies standards every 7 years. The same statute also states that school districts will have 1 year to adopt the state approved content area standards or adopt content area standards deemed as equal to or more rigorous than the state approved content area standards. Beginning in the summer of 2018, the Social Studies Standards revision process began. The State Board of Education adopted the revised Social Studies Standards on November 8, 2019. This means Nebraska school districts should have or will be adopting the 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards by November 8, 2020. Select the years on the slide to reveal information about the implementation timeline of the 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards. The Standards Crosswalk is a tool for educators, administrators, and all other stakeholders to use to compare and contrast the changes between the 2012 and 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards. This tool was created for two primary reasons. First, to help educators analyze the alignment of the old standards with the new. Second, to begin the work required to evaluate document changes and the impact of those changes to student learning, instructional materials, and curriculum. The crosswalk is a helpful tool, but it does not substitute for a complete and total understanding of the 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards. Select the steps below for guidance on use of the crosswalk. The instructional shifts that align with the 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards update were developed from the C3 framework and rooted in inquiry-based learning. The instructional shifts are 1. Developing questions and planning, 2. Focus on and applying disciplinary content, 3. Finding evidence and evaluating sources, and 4. Communicating conclusions. Before we continue with the instructional shifts, it is important to discuss a little background information concerning the development of the four instructional shifts. Let us begin with the C3 framework. Created in 2013, it contains three primary objectives: enhance and increase the rigor of the four disciplines within social studies, build a specific set of skills that seek to create more engaged citizens, and align social studies to a common set of standards. Now, why is inquiry-based learning so important? Well, it allows students to engage directly with the topic in classroom materials. It is described as a teaching method which combines student-centered, hands-on activities with discovery. It fosters the development of independent learners and encourages students to take responsibility for their own learning. This is the inquiry arc as developed by the National Council for the Social Studies. Take just a few moments to examine this document. The image you are now seeing is the same image on the cover of the 2019 Nebraska Social Studies Standards. You should see a correlation between the Bloom's taxonomy verb shown and the four dimensions of the C3 framework. Those who worked on the revision process of the social studies standards were intentional in ensuring that the new standards would align with not only the C3 framework, but inquiry based learning. Developing questions and planning for inquiry. In this phase of inquiry based learning, educators will set the stage for the topic of study and will be asked to develop compelling and supporting questions that will engage and excite the student during the inquiry process. Applying disciplinary concepts and tools. Educators will work with students to activate prior learning, teach new concepts, and to reinforce acquired knowledge contained within the four social studies disciplines: civics, economics, geography, and history. In addition, students will develop skills that will allow them to do social sciences. These skills will be useful to students both in and out of the classroom. Evaluating sources and using evidence. Part of the historical inquiry process asks that we evaluate sources and gather supporting evidence. When we make the request for students to do that, what exactly does it look like? How will our students know if the source is reliable or accurate? Are they able to confidently understand text objectives and biases? As educators, we understand that greater engagement with the sources of interest, students will show more effective use of the information and higher retention. Students learn the limitation of sources as well. To quote educator Horace Mann, evidence is the great equalizer. Understanding the past and comparing it to the present requires students to access multiple and multifaceted sources. To make sense of the world, it is imperative to make sure our students know how to select, judge, and use supporting evidence. This is a learned skill that can be applied across disciplines. Communicating conclusions and taking informed action. As we assist students in their journey towards an engaged civic life, it requires that as educators we provide various means of expression and settings in which to do so. Communicating supports the many ways in which students can communicate their findings and conclusions. It also provides for diverse settings and audiences for students to engage with as they finalize and conclude their inquiry based learning projects. Communicating conclusions can be accomplished in a variety of ways, including social media, reflection through classroom discussion, performances, Socratic seminars, and simulations. This dimension is important because it allows students to work together, understand varying perspectives, and students know that the results communicated by their peers were developed only after thorough research and an investment of their time. Thank you for completing the Timeline Crosswalk and Instructional Shifts webinar. Your time is valuable and I want to thank you for completing this course. I hope you were able to take away important information about social studies education in Nebraska. Please do not hesitate to contact Ebony McKeever, Social Studies Education Specialist with the Nebraska Department of Education if you have any questions, concerns, or deep burning thoughts.